If you wanted to learn about the rental market and how it intersects with the buyer-seller market for residential real estate, you need to watch this because today I have a great pod for you. Our unreal stat of the day is in July, there were more housing permits issued in the Dallas metro area, which has about 7-ish million people, than the entire state of California, which has close to 40 million people. That is crazy, but that's a real stat. I want to, in all of that, of course, ultimately flows down into both the renter market and the buy-sell market. So today, I'm happy to introduce you to my longtime friend, John Njoku. He is the founder of renthub.com. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. I know what RentHub is, obviously, but please tell our audience.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I actually, before I get into RentHub, I have plant envy because Kyle has that pretty slick, he claims it's real, but maybe it's probably fake, but who knows? It looks great. That's all that matters.
It's definitely real.
I don't know, dude. I don't know, man.
And I named her. Don't talk about Mel like that. That's Mel.
It's got to turn brown in a couple of episodes. That's how we'll know for sure. So my name is John. I'm the founder of RentHub, and at RentHub, we're really trying to survey and understand rental housing markets. We do this in a very unique way. We're compiling this giant rental market data set. We use what's called alternative data. So through different feeds or through our own methods, we're gathering data constantly from different corners, mostly on publicly available sources of the internet. And we take all that data and we make sense of it, parse it, normalize it. And then we're able to give people, really cool metrics and benchmarks and KPIs and insights on the rental market, such as, what this neighborhood or this zip code or this area is charging for rent, maybe what it did, last year as well, maybe how it's trending. And there's so many different use cases when you have all this data in a certain way. If you're a big landlord, you can start to track what your competitors are doing. If you're looking to rent in an area, you can say, hey, does this match my thesis or not? And then just generally, I think rents are an important metric like stock prices or the weather. You should just kind of know what's going on in your specific area. So that's RentHub in a nutshell. We're studying rents.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So let's talk about this unreal stat. More homes, and this is something that you and I have other friends that we sort of joke about and argue about all the time. This, first of all, this general idea of California versus Texas, right?
Yes.
And then in general, let's talk about this stat though. So Dallas is able to, and I'm going to assume because they've got much looser restrictions, et cetera, they're able to get all these permits, right? Versus like the whole state of California can't muster to match just Dallas. So what do you think so what's up with that? What's going on?
It's interesting. And I haven't fully fleshed this out. I do, talking about it with some friends and just thinking about it independently, some quick desk research. I think there's like two things. One, we just haven't quite built, since 2008, 2007, the United States has not built many homes compared to what it was doing. And actually, what it's built is lagging household formation. So there's a little bit of a dearth or glut, lack of housing supply. And I think that you have certain areas of the country that, can magnify those basic trends. So Cali is one of them, right? You have, maybe it's because there's not a lot of property tax income to be derived from housing, but you have NIMBYs and YIMBYs, and then you have cumbersome entitlement processes all across the state. But the reason why this is fascinating for rentals, and I think just salient generally, is that when you look at, the top 10 rental markets in the country, you're going to have about half of them be in California. You're going to have the San Francisco Bay Area. Okay. You're going to have LA. You're going to have San Diego. You even have like Riverside, San Bernardino, that area. So it's really, and then Sacramento's going to creep in there sometimes as well.
Interrupt you there. When you say top 10 market, top 10 by price, by volume, by what? How are you defining top 10?
Good question. And it's just really simple. It's one example of a metric. It's median rent price. And it's just on how high it is, the priciest markets around the country.
Yes.
And It can be a little bit, that stat can be a little bit, I don't know whether it's misleading or just imperfect because you're going to combine, 3 bedroom or single family houses with like studios. So then there's
Sure.
certain areas with a lot of studios and, maybe those are expensive, but you're going to combine it all. And that's how you're going to get that basic top 10 market metric.
Okay, got you. So your take in general, if I want to boil it down, is that look, California, for a host of factors, is not building in much of the country, but we're kind of
Yeah,
focusing on California for this part of the conversation, is not building enough homes to keep up with demand, and therefore that's pushing demand up so far that 5 of the 10 most expensive places to rent are in that state.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Unreal stat of the day is connected directly to rentals. And so I think there's this narrative right now in the market, especially in light of, interest rates, which we'll get to at some point, and just kind of this post pandemic or even, you know, current pandemic thing that rentals are ripping across the country. And it's kind of
Mhm.
this weird thing, but the rents are ripping and they're ripping in, obviously in the coastal markets, a lot of California. And then obviously, New York's gone bonkers
Hmm.
since the pandemic. Boston's always up there, although it's a smaller market. So you have some of these coastal markets, but then you also have these fascinating work from home destinations that are coming up.
Oh, Zoom towns.
Austin's kind of Zoom towns, baby. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Austin and even Huntsville, Alabama, of all places. Phoenix, of course, that's been there for a little bit. But
Sure.
you have these interesting pockets where obviously the narrative nationally is that rents are going crazy, but you definitely have these markets where things are a lot more exacerbated than we think. And I think that it's just fascinating when you think about rents. Then you think about what's going on the for sale side of the market right now with home prices going crazy until maybe recently. Then does that pretend that rents are going to continue to crank? Can they continue to crank? I mean, what's
Hmm.
going to happen? So these are all things that I'm trying to think about a lot as we're moving into the last quarter of the year and into next year.
No, that's actually a really good segue to my next question. So, the big homie, actually, he's the biggest homie at this point. Jay Powell just raised
JP.
rates again. Our good guy JP, and I think if you read what he's saying, I think everybody actually should actually go and watch that. I don't know what you call it, press conference, whatever it is.
Which one? The
And actually
Jackson Hole
listen.
one?
No, no, no. So that one for sure.
Yeah.
But the FOMC meeting from yesterday as well.
Oh, right on,
You
right on.
can listen to it for like I don't know, it's an hour or whatever it is. But he's basically he's doing his best Paul Volcker
Yep.
impression, and
Yep.
he seems to be not only just raising rates, but really signaling to me that it seems like he wants to keep them up there for some time, right? Um,
Yeah.
so homeownership has all of a sudden gotten even more. So besides the price, so people aren't building enough homes. That leads to sort of an inventory problem, right?
Yep.
And then rates are now up significantly. I think a little bit more than double what they were earlier in the year.
Yes.
Some people are deciding they're going to maybe stay renting longer. Some people were maybe going to buy, but they're giving up the idea of ownership altogether.
Yeah.
What I guess my first question for this, I know there's a lot of moving parts, but what are you simply what are you seeing in your rental numbers? Are you seeing, I guess, like you're kind of touching on before, more demand going to the rental side, and therefore pushing rental numbers up, or if because people are having a hard time with inflation, are some cities starting to push those rental prices down? Like what is happening in the rental market
It's really bonkers right now. So I'm seeing up and to the right. And it
for everything?
seems like it's, yeah, for everything. Now one caveat is that there is, now you're seeing some seasonality. So quote unquote leasing season for markets with seasons is upon us, right? So is over. So March to September in like Chicago. So no one's, not as many people are going to be trying to lease or rent apartments
Right.
in November in Chicago. But in Miami, and then that also rhymes with the academic calendar too. So things are definitely chilling out. But for most part, a lot of the country has you know positive year on year growth around rental markets in pretty substantial ways. And this gets back to like, I think during the pandemic, we have a pal that moved to New York during the pandemic, got a great
Right.
deal there. And then after his year was out, you know, the landlords
Yeah.
when the light switch was flipped back on in the city, rents went up like crazy. I have a buddy that moved to Miami. Light switch split. Well, Miami never went out, but a year
Sure.
later, after people started to get hip to whatever was going on, rents went nuts. And frankly, I think a lot of people wanted Miami became very attractive to people, just like New York's attractive to people now. Again, if I'm going to be working from home, I just need to be in a pretty vibrant space. So
Yeah.
it got
Remember New
pretty
York
interesting.
was dead. Do you remember that whole bit?
Dead. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
laughing. I remember New York will never return, and I think it was Seinfeld that had wrote maybe an op-ed for New York Times or somewhere that was like, you have to understand, New York will never quote unquote die. It's still New
Right.
York, right?
Right.
Like all the things that were exciting about New York after the
Yep.
pandemic are exciting again, and
Yes.
therefore it's has this mad rush. But yeah, no, it was that always made me laugh out loud. After living in New York,
Yeah.
I can tell you it's not going anywhere, right?
Not going anywhere. But there were a couple other things that happened. I think during the pandemic, like if you lived in New York, you became obsessed with getting space and getting out of elevators, like during the,
Yes, that's real.
and so, shoot, rates were like you can get mortgage rates super
Yeah.
low. So people started saying, oh, I'm going to go to Austin
West
and
or
I need to
even
move
Westchester
now.
or Long Island, they were going
Yeah.
just slightly
Yep.
outside of
That's right.
the city and getting great green grass and space and a pool
Yep.
and all those things.
And then when the
We've definitely
pandemic
seen that.
Yeah, and then when I guess people were like all clear and people started moving back, you also had a new generation of renter that was coming into the city as well, like people,
Hmm.
graduating from college and whatnot. So
Yes.
that's a dynamic that I think often gets missed in this housing dialogue, which is that, household formation is real, or like the growth or the transition of buyers, the progression of buyers or renters. Renters turn into buyers in normal
Yep.
markets, or they have
Yep.
families that need
Yep.
space and stuff like that. So gets left out.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to switch gears just for a moment. I think this is interesting, but both you and I think, are unique in prop tech in that we have clients, customers that are both consumers,
Yep.
that are our end user, and also institutions. And so institutions for
Yes.
us have typically been private equity, asset managers, REITs,
Yes.
what we generally call REOs. So these are
Yes.
large institutions that buy and sell residential property for profit. And in the last probably 5 years, we've seen just an explosion of that activity.
Yep.
The Blackstones of the world, or that company they spun off, I'm forgetting the name right now, but these are really big institutions, right? What sort of activity have you seen with that group in the sort of buy rent sphere?
It's been crazy. It's been similar, and I think you've helped me both understand the space better. And actually, thank you for introducing me to some folks. So,
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
the whole space and the SFR, or single family rental in space, or build to rent BTR space, has just gone bonkers. And now, I would say that either companies that cater to that market, or operators that are actually existing in that market, are a good line share of the clientele we have.
Oh,
Simply,
no kidding. Okay.
a lot of the data and vendor and software product types were built for multifamily or commercial. But with
Mhm.
the rise of this new asset class, you don't have a lot of things catering. And so a lot of these folks have built stuff themselves. But when you have vendors like me that can actually cater to them, it becomes really interesting straight away. So, people on our case, I think there's really two use cases. One is, they're just buying the data generally. They're
Hmm.
conducting their own analysis with it. They're using it for comps in their websites. They're using it to actually build out valuation models. What should the rent be for this new asset based off of data that we can feed them?
Hmm.
Maybe they're building visualizations with the data. So, in large part, a lot of these groups come to us just for data. But I read a stat the other day. I mean, maybe this could have been an unreal stat, or maybe what was it, like $15 billion has come into single family for rent since the
Hmm.
pandemic.
Hmm.
And I think it's just
That
Wall
sounds low,
Street's thirst
actually.
for, sounds low. Since the pandemic
Yeah.
though, 2020, I mean, could be,
Hmm.
you know, thirst for yield. People want yield. And now that
I
people
wonder
figure out
if,
how to do the asset class,
so it's
uh,
funny, you can lever that number, right? So maybe it's
yep,
not
you
low,
can. That's
maybe
right.
it's 15
That's
in
right.
equity, and then, right. So
That's right.
the debt on top of that becomes a big number, but it's a $2
That's right.
trillion, annual market. So that's why I said it feels low to me, but no,
Feels
it's
low.
regardless, it's a
Yeah.
massive number. Now, as a consumer, you've got to compete against, Wall Street, buying a home.
Yes.
It's tough. It also, to me, highlights something that is sort of, like the intrinsic value of home ownership. If you didn't believe in it before, when the
Mm,
quote unquote smartest people in the room are beating you over the head and stealing, coming in and buying the home instead of you, that should
yep.
convince you more the value of actually owning the property yourself. And so it's funny, and I'm seeing a lot of, and I want to get your take on this. I've loved, like Earn Your Leisure, and some of these other sort of podcasts and sort of
Yes.
TikTok influencers that are really heavy into ownership models, real estate, et cetera. And there's almost like I know when I'm on TikTok, my TikTok is like almost like renter TikTok. It's like SFR TikTok or something. Like in a lot of real estate professionals that are like, I'm doing, like one guy's doing Section 8. All he does is Section 8. And so he's like showing you, I've got this yacht. I just bought how to buy this yacht.
Oh God.
Section 8 home, And so like there's like this whole like influencer thing. So I'm wondering like, what are you seeing in that space? Grant Cardone's another guy, right? He's really
Sure.
heavy on building up, almost selling awareness of the rental market,
Yeah.
multifamily, owning to rent. Like what have you seen? How is that affecting your business? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple, the trend of, the Wall Streetification or institutionalization of like the mom and pop space, single family for rent. So people keep saying like, oh, it's 90, they're buying up all the homes. And I
Yeah.
think they're now buying a lot of homes, but, I think the overall percentage is still under 5%, something
Oh
like
yeah.
that. Like
It's
it's
still
something
small. I mean, it
ridiculous, still a
impacts, but
sliver.
it's. Mhm.
The impact's crazy. And so that's the first thing I think to consider. But it's fascinating that you're talking a lot about ownership because I still think, and I read this piece yesterday. Man, I didn't forward it to you, but I'm sure you saw it. NFX, Pete Flint, truly a co-founder, talking about real estate 3.0 and prop tech. And 3.0, he's describing as, if 1.0 was just information and 2.0 was kind of the transaction, 3.0 is ownership. And the question is like, do we need to own homes the way we used to? Right. So right
Hmm.
now, my wife and I are living, doing the monthly Airbnb, that digital nomad life. It's kind of nice to just not worry about anything. It's definitely a little bit
Yep.
pricier than actually having either a rent or a note. But there's a lot of value in that kind of serendipity to pick the next spot.
Yep.
And I think that, this generation that's younger than us, I don't know that ownership is going to be drilled into them in the same way. And I think that that's what some of is behind what Pete Flynn was saying. I think he's saying like, look, we got crypto now, which can help track ownership better.
Hmm.
You can
Hmm. Hmm.
fractionalize assets. If you look at Picasso, the vacation rental, it's really just a modern timeshare. But do you really
Yep.
need to own your own home in Maui, or do you just want access to it? So I think that that's really fascinating
This
to like
is
access versus
yes.
ownership, which is I think where we're really headed. I don't know if we need to own it.
So I wouldn't disagree. I think it's so funny, like especially when you start talking about like on the internet, I think people often look at everything black and white. It's a winner,
Yeah,
there's a loser.
exactly.
It's
That's right.
owning or not owning.
That's
And
right.
so like this idea that wait, maybe there's something in between there, and there's a fraction, right? And I think that's where I keep ending up. I fundamentally believe one of the greatest ways to grow wealth, et cetera, is through ownership.
Sure.
Like full
Owning
stop.
assets. Absolutely.
You own
Tried and
assets,
true.
then you can decide what you want to do. If you want to sell a fraction of it as a token,
Sure.
some sort of
Tried.
coin.
Yep.
Do you want to rent it out? Do you want to make it an Airbnb? Like, but you
Hmm.
become the decider if you own the asset, right?
Yeah. Of
And the more you own of it, the better. So most people don't even
course.
own the whole thing,
Of
right?
course.
You have a mortgage, right? So you want to get a HELOC, a home equity loan. You want to, right? There are all
I'm a
these
rejoicer.
things, right?
100%.
That
Yeah.
optionality grows the more you own the asset. I think that prices have gone, inflation for homing, real estate inflation is crazy, right? So when our
Sure.
parents could buy a home for say $50,000,
Yes.
that day in especially around big metro areas is done, right?
It's
So
gone. Yeah.
people start thinking, well, I can't buy, therefore I just want the experience of living X Y Z place, so I'll rent. And so it's almost like you don't have a choice, but to sort of pivot your personal, depending on, if you're not a wealthy person, you come from a wealthy family that can give you that down payment. Like it
Yeah.
really does start to restrict what you can do. And so I think some of this is what Pete is saying is it's somewhat inevitable because of some of the macro
Sure. Right on.
trends. But I'm a very big proponent, as you know, of home ownership. I think that's where it's
You
at.
know, what you just said about parents or someone gifting the down payment because it's gotten so ridiculous,
Yeah.
especially with all the home price appreciation that we've seen. There's startups filling that void, right? Like Divvy,
Yep.
for example. You just basically becomes another fintech play.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
that's fascinating. You had asked, what am I seeing on the rental side? I
Yep.
thought about that as I was talking. I think what's interesting now is like, just think about like 10 years ago or longer than that, like, when we were maybe in college, geez, we're old. And what you saw, the only people that there was very mom and pop, how could you rent your house? You put up a classified ad, you put up
Yeah.
a sign on the lamppost, you put something in the coffee shop. Now it's pretty easy to rent a house. You
Hmm.
can Airbnb, you can rent, your attic, you can rent your coach house. And I think you just have more people coming to more supply coming into the rental space. And therefore it's an easier thing for people to do. So I think you just have like a growth of the asset class in general. And I think we're seeing some of that. And I think that supply is going to, and demand, they're going to kind of teeter and, find the optimal place is going to continue to be a roving circle. But I think that that's a lot of what we're seeing too. It's just really a little bit of a disruption into the whole rental space. You got Airbnbs, you got SFRs, you have conventional, you have
Yeah.
new multifamilies. Think last thing I'll say on this is remember when the only way you could rent a home was for a year at a time for whatever reason, right? It was just 12-month lease.
Yep.
Now you can go in and, into a building and you're like, hey man, I got 3 months, and I'll be like, got you.
Yeah.
That wasn't always the case.
No, you're right. There's real sort of optionality around the market.
Yes,
I think it's interesting you brought up how different new companies are innovating and filling the void in different places around. I still think that we're seeing the tip of the iceberg on that. We're just
yes,
scratching the
absolutely.
surface. Like it's such real estate and real estate tech lags the overall market. We're so
Of
far behind when
course,
it comes to technology. So
of
we're going to
course,
continue to see, I think, a ton of innovation. And
definitely.
that one's cool. Like, because the average person, certainly where I'm from, you can't call your parents and say, oh yeah, you got 100K to throw down against my, because houses now
Yeah,
average around $400,000. So there needs to be some sort of fix for that, and I
sure.
love that somebody. It's not what we're doing. We save the user by cutting the commissions and fees, so there's huge savings
Yes,
there. But
right.
maybe a combination of the two, all of a sudden, like it becomes a lot more affordable
Exactly.
for the average person. Okay, so anything else that I guess a couple things. One, I would love to understand. You did a summary on Rent Hub.
Yeah,
What you're just like I'm living this. It's my baby. I love on real estate. I feel like we add this really great value for Rent Hub. What makes you all great? Why am I choosing you to help me on my whatever my mission is?
glad you asked. No, it's really interesting. I think it's important to take a step back to see what we're really doing at RentHub. I think that there's a really simple maxim to remember, and it's that on the for sale side of real estate, uh, buy sell transactions are publicly recorded at the city or county or municipal level. And so, therefore, there is a public repository of data and ownership and a trove of information available. And actually, this is what Pete Flint was referring to as Real Estate 1.0. When Zillow and Trulia came out, they took that information, made it public, and it kind of democratized the whole process. On the rental side, that dynamic is not there. Essentially, what I pay for rent, what you pay for rent, these are private contracts between ourselves and our landlords, and that's about it. So when so much of the economy, every real estate decision, so many other types of decisions outside of real estate are based on rents and kind of what people pay for housing. The underpinning of RentHub is the ability to give people some sort of understanding of this. This wasn't possible years ago when a lot of the rental markets were offline.
Okay.
But now with the internet, a lot of this information is somewhere publicly available. And it's our job, whether it's through some web scraping or through some other feeds, to put all that data in one place and help people understand it better. So, Zillow and Redfin and Zumper have great and very marketable summaries of markets, but understand that their summaries are just from their own data sets. And what we do is we take the publicly available kind of a clip of Zillow, Zumper, all that stuff, and we're almost like a super layer over that. Our job is to conduct research on these markets and pull all the information together to give people the real picture on what's going on with rental markets.
It's funny you keep mentioning Zillow and Trulia, and you don't mention Unreal Estate, because that's really messed up.
Well, unless you were around in 2003.
All right, I'll give it to you.
But the future is on real estate, and look, like, they're the old guards. Like, innovation is kind of capped and trapped with those, and again, that's why their principles have moved on to other things. But on real estate is definitely taking some of the foundation that they set rightfully and moving and evolving on to the future, which we're all really excited about.
Thank you. Okay, I'm cutting that part out, but I was just talking trash to you. Okay, so let me do a quick recap. So we talked about this really weird situation where Dallas is getting more housing permits than the whole state of California, and how that's flowing into a lack of inventory, pushing prices up, not only for homes that people want to buy, but also for rentals. And what you've seen is everything sort of up and to the right coming out of the pandemic, and especially in these metro areas and really popular places like California and New York, where renting a place has not gotten any cheaper, and it continues to get more and more expensive. We also talked about sort of the migration from Web 1.0 to where we are today, where at first it was simply showing some of the data that was out there. Now we can do a lot more interesting things and really kind of provide more optionality, more opportunities for people that are buying, selling, renting, maybe going nomad, like you've done with your wife. So we covered that as well. Now is the time. That is one of my favorites. First of all, I want to thank you for joining. You will be receiving a gift. All of our guests get a gift, and so look out for that in the mail.
Oh, wow.
And now is the time for sneaker check, fit check, whatever you want to call it. I'll go first. Because we are a company that takes our sneakers seriously. Today, I'm rocking some APLs. These are super comfortable. I'm hitting the gym today, and I can transition. I can wear these with the regular fit. I can throw on my gym, fit. I can do that. Send some of the APL. These are, by the way, this company is one of the only companies been banned from the NBA. They made these high tops that make you jump higher.
Hold on. Let me stop you there. What are APLs?
I think it's like Athletic Propulsion Laboratory or something like that.
I see.
Yeah, they made these. So I thought that was really funny. But I tried on the shoes. I'm like, actually, they're pretty comfortable to work out in. Not the jumping ones.
Are they a prosthetic? Like, how are they? They're cheating. That's why they're not allowed in the NBA. Okay, let's get that.
They have this thing in the sole that actually provides some additional kinetic energy when you jump. Right. I know. I've seen you play. You might could use these. You might want to load up the old You know, just letting you know.
I need all the help I can get. It's
Okay, so
hilarious.
what you got?
Well, look, man, here's the deal. I'm going to preface this. I like to preface things.
Okay.
I'm first generation American. My parents are African, so I'm very culturally African, and we don't do shoes.
Okay. Okay.
So, you feel me? So,
I'm
I
a little worried.
got some socks
Oh,
here.
you went with the socks. Okay.
No, I got some socks, man. I don't know how people wear shoes inside. Your feet get all hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up, you take your shoes off at the door and your feet can breathe and then you keep the house clean. That's what we do.
Okay. Respect. Look, I just found out I'm like 35% Nigerian, so
Hey, welcome.
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'll kick these off at some point.
You wonder why your feet get all hot and you're like, what am I
What am
doing?
I
I
doing
don't need
wrong?
to jump high inside the
What
office.
That's a good point.
Leave them off.
All right, man. Thank you so much for joining today. It's been a pleasure.
This is a blast.
Hope to have you on again. And then we'll
Yeah, man.
we'll be in touch.
There are always some stats to dissect, so I'm happy to do that. And thank you so much for having me on here. Don't kill that plant.
I won't, man. Mel's gonna make it. She'll be all right. All right, we'll chat later. Thank
Maybe
you.
you'll never die because it's fake.
Oh wait.
All right, later,
Stop
guys.
it. All right, later. Right.